Welcome to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast, presented by Vox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin.
Stephon Gilmore go to the Patriots. Now they let Mike Gillislee go to the Patriots. Are they now just the farm club within their own division?
Greg.
He's one of these faux leading women. It's like, that's not Angelina Jolie or Jennifer Aniston. It's some girl that I would see at the Circle K. That's kind of Alshon Jeffrey.
And Ryan.
There is absolutely no reason why O.J. Howard should be drafted before Cameron Brate. Welcome, everybody, to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullroot, and we are doing a back-to-back episodes, back-to-back nights. This is a little different for us. Last year, we were only doing two a week. What was it, a Sunday night show and a
Wednesday night show.
Or yeah, it was Monday night, Wednesday night. So we are trying this out. We did one last night. We're doing one tonight. We're going to try to do one tomorrow night and another one on Wednesday night. So we're going to see how this works out with this schedule. So again, we wanted to remind you guys to go to skullkingfootball.com to download our draft guide. Downloading that will get you an entry to win a free Jay Ajayi signed jersey or a Martavis Bryant signed jersey, or for the really lucky person, a Skull King Fantasy Football T-shirt. So we've got that little contest going. Make sure you get in, enter that. Also, you could leave us a review on iTunes, or even just give us a rating. Like we've said before, we believe we are at least a 3.5-star podcast. So we don't care if you give us 1 star, 5 stars. We want some ratings on there. So again, we're at least a 3.5 stars. So if you could give us 3 or 4 stars, that would be great. All right. So why don't we go ahead and hop into the news? Today we've got Justin, Greg, and Ian with us. So let's go ahead and hop into this. And then after we get through the news, we're going to start covering some of our sleepers for the 2017 season. So let's get going. Undrafted free agent running back Matt Breida has had all the appearances of being the 49ers' number 2 running back in Sunday night's regular season dress rehearsal. A lot of people were expecting it to be, I want to say, Joe Williams. It looks like right now it's a undrafted free agent who's going to be backing up Carlos Hyde. Is this a guy that you would be willing to take a flyer on, knowing the injury history of Carlos Hyde, Greg?
I think that's going a little too deep at this point, at least in the draft. I think it's worth a waiver wire watch for sure, but I'm not expending draft capital on something that deep on a team like the Niners.
All right. Moving on, Falcons coach Dan Quinn said Devonta Freeman will return to practice on Monday. With concussions, are you, Ian will go to you on this one. Are you hesitant at all with guys who have had some concussions in preseason? Are you a little hesitant to draft them going into the season at all?
Not really. It depends on the hit, depends on the situation, but for the most part, every football player, especially having been a football player, like, I don't know how many concussions I had. Like, you get hit. That's what you do. And, if he's back on the field, they got enough doctors out there. If they're willing to put him back out there, I'm willing to draft him. All and right. Frankly, I will take Devonta Freeman in the first round.
I would agree with you there. I would take him in the first round as well. All right. Joe Flacco's absence extends to 5 weeks, but Coach John Harbaugh promised he'll be ready for the opener. We'll see about that one. No one in our group is even going to think about drafting Joe Flacco. We pretty much all avoid him like the plague because he doesn't really have a whole lot of talent to throw to anyways. So not that he's all that talented to be able to hit the talent that he may have to throw to. So
hey, he can check down to Danny Woodhead. He's fine.
I got Danny Woodhead auto-drafted. I had to work yesterday, and I got Danny Woodhead, and I was like, okay.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I guess.
All right. The Indy star Zach Kiefer believes Andrew Luck with his shoulder will miss week 1, quote, barring a somewhat miraculous turn of events. I don't even know if he'll be ready for week 4 at this point. Again, with me, there's been no news out of camp, and I still go on the philosophy that no news is bad news when it comes to his shoulder. The fact that they're keeping this so under wraps means it's a lot worse than anyone is willing to admit.
Well, that's what the Colts did before.
That's true. Because isn't that kind of how they treated the whole Peyton Manning thing when he got injured with his neck and everything too?
Well, the neck, and then with the initial shoulder injury with Luck.
Yep.
During that season, they kept it completely under wraps. They kept the surgery under wraps and treated it like it was no big deal. And then it came out that it actually was a big deal. So, in my head, it's a big deal.
Yeah. I think I've moved him down in our rankings to like the 12th or 13th QB at that point. So, in a radio interview on WEEI, Tom Brady has said that he has trust with Danny Amendola. Justin, are you gonna? I mean, do you think that Danny Amendola is actually going to get much of a boost here with Edelman going out, or are you more looking in other directions in terms of New England's offense?
I'm a bigger believer in Chris Hogan, and that maybe they look to put Cooks into more of that slot hybrid of an Edelman / deep threat kind of a role. I have not liked Amendola or drafting Amendola ever, even when he was back playing with the Rams years ago. He's fast, but he's a poor man's Edelman, and Edelman is good because he's got Tom Brady throwing to him. So he may have trust with Amendola, but to me, that's not going to do anything to move the needle for me to draft him.
All right.
Can I tackle this one?
Yeah, since you're our resident Patriots fan.
Yeah. So you got Chris Hogan as the deep threat. Brandon Cooks is or has been the deep threat with New Orleans up until now. So I see him as that deep slot. They might actually move Amendola down into that slot threat. You got two speedsters, Hogan and Cooks are, they got wheels. So, you can outrun guys. Then you got the underneath, and you've got Malcolm Mitchell, who I think is going to get a ton of playing time. Malcolm Mitchell is the guy that I'm banking on, not Hogan or Cooks.
Finally, someone else who speaks my language. I can see. I mean, with me, I can see Cooks getting a little bit of it, but I like Malcolm Mitchell to come out on top in terms of getting a lot of the work in that slot, in gaining a lot from Edelman being out.
Yep.
All right, moving on. The Miami Herald's Barry Jackson reports the Dolphins told Jarvis Landry's representation there was no truth whatsoever to the reports they were trying to trade the receiver. I don't know if I believe that or not.
BS.
Let's see. Demaryius Thomas was held out of Monday's practice with a groin issue that he suffered in the last game. There's a lot of just no news right now. The Redskins are still trying to trade third string running back Matt Jones. No one's going to take him.
No.
Brandon Marshall returned to practice on Monday. And with Odell Beckham Jr. right now, the Giants are hopeful that he'll start week 1. Greg, what are some of your thoughts on Brandon Marshall for this season? Whether Odell is at full strength or not, what's kind of what's your take on Brandon Marshall?
I have a hard time seeing Marshall producing less than 1,000 yards. I'd see him closer to being possibly a 1,200-yard receiver. I think he's a massive improvement from what they had last year and, whatever time they had with Victor Cruz. So I think it's a big addition for Eli. And so I see like 1,200 yards and the potential to be somewhere around 8 touchdowns for Marshall. He's 2 seasons away from a 1,500-yard season playing with crap and with the Jets, and he still produced 800 yards last year. Far fewer targets, like 50 fewer targets, 50 fewer receptions. Those balls are going to come his way when he's with the Giants, and so I see him being highly productive.
Okay. Bears wide receiver Cameron Meredith does have a torn ACL. His MRI showed there is other damage also. There are still more tests to determine how much damage has been done to his knee. Is anyone okay? I'll kind of open this up. Is anyone even going to think about drafting anyone for any type of wide receiver, or even the tight end Zach Miller from the Bears? In one loud response, we all say
can't really see it happening.
No. Late
round pick on Kevin White, maybe.
They actually called me earlier today to play wide receiver.
Eric Ebron returned to Lions practice after being out for a while with this hamstring issue. I'm not seeing him being all that productive. Leonard Fournette has ramped up his practice participation in recent days and will be ready for week 1. They've kept him out. I want to say he actually injured his foot in like the first preseason game against the Patriots or something like that.
Yeah.
And they've pretty much kept him out of games and just had him practicing, getting that foot back so that he'd be ready for week 1. Yeah, well, it looks like it's been official. Josh McCown has been named the starting quarterback for the New York Jets, and everyone says, who cares?
Had no other choice.
Yeah.
One guy is injured, and the other guy sucks out loud.
I tried out. I'm 34 and fat and out of shape, so
you would have fit right in.
Well, I can throw 20 interceptions a year.
Yeah,
for less money.
A lot less money. All right. And the big news of the day, not so much fantasy related, but the Lions and Matthew Stafford agreed to a 5-year contract, expected to make him the highest paid player in NFL history. A team source told ESPN looks like it's 5 years, $135 million. So,
guaranteeing 5 years that the Lions don't win squat.
Well, if they're going to pay him that much, they can't afford to put it anywhere else. So,
sounds like a Joe Flacco contract.
Yeah, kind of.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our sleepers for this season. So, what we're kind of going with is a sleeper in terms of how we are deciding this today. Is our sleeper quarterbacks will be anyone that is outside the top 12. So anyone that would be considered like a quarterback 2, that could possibly put up, mid quarterback 1 type numbers. For running backs, it'll be outside the top 24. For wide receivers, outside the top 36, and then for tight ends, back again to outside the top 12. So, I'm using Fantasy Football Calculator. That's just what we've been using a lot. If you guys have a different website or whatever that you're using, that's fine. Just again, we're trying to keep it outside the 12, 24, and 36. So, going to PPR, starting with the quarterbacks, and let's start with our quarterback guru, Greg. Who is your quarterback outside the top 12 that you think could have a really good season this year?
Well, going kind of tried and true here, and Fantasy Football Calculator has him, I believe, at 18. So I'd say Eli Manning. I say the addition of Marshall and the Evan Ingram, the pickup that they had at tight end that they drafted this year, also looks highly productive. I think the running game is going to be better. So I think it's conservative to say that Eli could improve, his numbers last year by 10 to 15%. So that puts him over 30 touchdown passes, and still in the league leaders in yardage. The knock on Eli is the turnovers.
Yeah.
But Drew Brees gets selected well ahead of 18, and those turnover numbers are going to be comparable. And there's probably not going to be a huge amount of separation between those two at the end of the year. So I would say Eli is my quote-unquote sleeper pick.
All right, Ian, who do you have?
I'm taking Deshaun Watson. All sorts of potential, and he plays for the Texans. So I think he takes that job in the first couple weeks. So Deshaun Watson is somebody that I picked in the last round of my last draft, and I was super happy about it.
All righty. Justin, who's your quarterback sleeper that you're picking out this year?
Currently, according to mock drafts, he's being taken as the quarterback 16. I like Andy Dalton for a couple of reasons. He has proven to be a quarterback 1 in the past. I think the major issue last year was turnover and injuries, and that was really what cost him his fantasy production numbers. Through injury, A.J. Green, Gio Bernard, and Tyler Eifert all had injury issues last year. Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu also left the team. So other than A.J. Green, who was he supposed to throw to that he had any chemistry with? This year, he's got individuals outside shot of being relevant. Brandon LaFell, who's got some chemistry from being a second year. He's proven that he can be a quarterback 1, now having more chemistry and adding in young, versatile talent like a Joe Mixon and a John Ross makes things a little bit more evenly rounded. And I see Andy Dalton being someone who can be a quarterback 1 this year.
All right. Well, I am going to go with the same pick that I had last year. I'm going with the guy who just got paid, Matthew Stafford. He's on Fantasy Football Calculator, 12-man leagues. He's being drafted as the quarterback 15. Last year, before he got injured, before his middle finger on his throwing hand got injured, he was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league. He was top 5 in fantasy points through the first 8 or 9 weeks until he had that injury. After that, obviously things went downhill for him, but he still finished even with a lot less production throughout the rest of the year. He still finished as the quarterback 11 after at one point being the quarterback number 5 in terms of fantasy points. And so I'm going back to the well again. As long as he stays healthy in that system, they've added more weapons for him to throw to. I think that he could have a really solid season and put up solid quarterback 1 numbers. So, and just for reference, last year I was going to throw this in. Justin, do you remember who your quarterback was last year that you picked as your sleeper?
Was it Tyrod Taylor?
It was. He finishes the quarterback number 13. So
just outside of quarterback 1.
Just outside of quarterback 1. All right.
At least I was right.
What was mine? Do you have all of ours?
Well, I only had those 2 because that was our second episode, and I think you joined us like halfway through the season as part of the podcast.
Okay.
So this is on what we did on the podcast. So
gotcha.
All right. So now let's move on to our running backs, and Ian, we'll start with you. Running back outside the top 24 that you think could have a really solid season this year.
That one's going to be tough. I like Joe Mixon. I like Rex Burkhead.
Okay.
Rex Burkhead has a forehead made of stone, and he can catch the ball. So, dumping the ball off to him, which Tom Brady likes to do, Burkhead can catch the ball and just run straight through everybody. Whereas James White is the avoid people.
Yeah.
Burkhead likes to run through people. So I would take I'm not sure where Mixon's at. Can you tell me?
Mixon's actually going somewhat high. He's running back number 18. So.
Okay. So I would take Rex Burkhead over anybody.
All right. Let's go, Justin. Who do you got?
Well, if it was outside the top 23, I'd go with Bilal Powell because he's number 24. But since it's outside the top 24, I really like Rob Kelly this year. He did really, really well in the last preseason game this last Sunday. against a historically better than average defense in Cincinnati. 10 carries, 57 yards. They didn't really open up the offense until Rob Kelly was successful on the ground. That's when everything else opened up. And so I look for Rob Kelly currently as the 37th running back available in round 8 as a solid person to start. Can be a starter. A lot of people who like to do the zero running back strategy, you can start him and still get him in the 8th round and look at getting maybe a tight end a little bit earlier, or your quarterback or your receivers, your running backs early, and still get a quality player in round 8 in Rob Kelly.
Yeah, I like that. Again, you're getting a starting running back as what, the 37th running back in the 8th round. You're getting an NFL starting running back in the 8th round. I mean, you've got to go with value there. So, and right ahead of him is again another starting running back in Frank Gore. So,
yep.
For me, outside the top 24, oh man, I mean. 3 days ago, I would say it was Kareem Hunt, and then Spencer Ware went down, and now Kareem Hunt's getting drafted in the 4th round. So, I still think I'm going to stick with this one. It'll be interesting to see how he plays out with the new quarterback. I've got Duke Johnson at number 39 for PPR leagues. They've got him as their top slot guy right now. On top of that, he's also going to be the passing down back with Isaiah Crowell doing mostly the first and second down stuff. So they've stated that they want Duke Johnson to be like a chess queen, to be able to use all over the board, to be able to use in multiple different types of situations. And so it'll be interesting to see with Deshaun Kaiser as the starting quarterback how well Duke Johnson plays out, because I think that Kaiser plays somewhat like Cam Newton, likes to throw the ball downfield, isn't necessarily as accurate with those short and mid-range passes, likes to run the ball himself. So again, we'll see how that one goes, but I still like Duke Johnson, who's had 50 catches the last 2 years and over 500 yards receiving each of the last 2 years, as a solid pickup as the 39th running back going at the end of the 8th round. So. Greg, who do you have for your running back sleeper?
Well, mine's going to require somebody to get out of his way, and Frank Gore's going to have to get out of his way. But ultimately, I think Marlon Mack pays dividends as the season goes on. I expect him to get more and more, of a share of the action in each game, and then ultimately be getting better than 50% of that, at least by the halfway point of this season. So I think there's a lot of value in him, kind of going forward. I think, I'm not going to knock Frank Gore. He's just at an age where at some point, you're going to have to see what somebody else can do. And certainly the chatter's been pretty high on Marlon Mack.
All right. And Justin, do you remember who our running backs were last year?
I do not remember running backs. No.
Let's see. I think I had Bilal Powell I picked. I want to say he was going in like the 13th round last year. He finished as the running back 16 in PPR leagues. And I'm trying to think. I can't remember who our other one was. Whoever it was didn't end up in the whoever you picked. Oh, it was Darren Sproles, who ended up as the running back number 25. So not terrible. All right. not terrible. All right.
It's not the worst thing ever.
It's not Charles Barkley terrible.
But you don't ever want to talk about it again in public.
There you go. All right.
My phone autocorrects to instead of Sproles, it's Sparkles.
All right.
Wow.
So
I'm going to get a Saints jersey where it says Sparkles on the back.
Okay. Outside the top 36 wide receiver sleepers, Justin, you get to go first this time.
I'm going to go deep with this one, currently drafted in the 12th round, and that's Cole Beasley. In all of the drafts I've been a part of, Cole Beasley, and that's 10 drafts. A couple of those are mocked against real people. But in all of the drafts, he's only been drafted in 2 out of 12, which is a crying shame personally, because when you look at it, Ezekiel Elliott is out. They need someone to open up the game or the field for Darren McFadden. Darren McFadden is not a pass-catching back, so they're going to look to do the dinks and dunks because Dak Prescott needs something to open it up to throw the ball downfield to Bryant. And so I look for Ezekiel Elliott, who saw a huge uptick once Dak Prescott became the quarterback. In 2015, only 52 receptions, and last year, 75 receptions, 800 yards. When you look at it comparatively, he has comparable receiving numbers to a very, very popular flex pick in Danny Woodhead. Now, Danny Woodhead may get similar receptions, but he's not going to get you the same amount of yards. So Cole Beasley is a very qualified flex play and could also get more touchdowns now that Ezekiel Elliott is out for the first 7 weeks.
All right. So, yeah, I actually picked up Cole Beasley in one of my drafts already. So, for me, outside that top 36, really it's Tyrell Williams, who continually still is not getting drafted any higher than the 8th round. You've got the perpetually injured Keenan Allen. You've got Mike Williams, who's still out. They're hoping for an October return for him. So you take Williams out, and so Tyrell has his only competition really for receiving is Keenan Allen. And last year, with Keenan Allen out, he finished with 69 catches, over 1,000 yards, 8 TDs, and was in the top 5 in yards after catch. So this is a guy that can get the job done, and the fact that he's being drafted as the wide receiver 40 in PPR leagues, I think, is a bit ridiculous. I think he's an awesome value down there, and very well could be a really good pickup for your team. So, Greg, your turn on the wide receiver front.
Well, I am big time on the Chris Hogan bandwagon. I think he's the most natural fit now, given where he's number 44 overall as far as wide receivers being drafted in the 9th round, I think you do take a risk there because I think it's going to be in flux before that settles out. But the fact of the matter is, if Danny Amendola was supposed to do what he's always been supposed to do, then Julian Edelman wouldn't have been getting the balls he was getting because they would have been going to Amendola because he's a more explosive player. But why does Amendola not get the ball? Because he's often on the injured report, right? So I don't think that he's going to be a guy who's going to fit in there and suddenly get 100 receptions. So where else are you going to go? I think Hogan is a far more explosive, much quicker version of Edelman. He doesn't have the hands per se, probably at this point that Edelman has, and certainly Brady doesn't have the confidence in him. But if you look at how that guy came on at the end of the year, 650 yards, fewer than 40 receptions, I mean, that guy was a beast at the end of the year, and I think that he could really, really explode here. So I like Chris Hogan, certainly to be drafted. I think it's a risk if you're taking him with the expectation to start from week 1, but I would definitely want him high on my bench depth chart.
Okay. And Ian, wide receiver for you.
Malcolm Mitchell. 100%. He is the greatest quarterback in NFL history throwing to him. And his number 1 wide receiver is out. Hogan's the deep threat. Brandon Cooks was the deep threat for Drew Brees. Who's going to play that middle? Malcolm Mitchell. Amendola just, he doesn't have it. So I see Malcolm Mitchell pulling in those middle catches that picking up where Edelman can't do. So my sleeper is Malcolm Mitchell.
All righty. Justin, last year our 2 wide receivers were Marvin Jones, who started off hot and finished as the wide receiver, I want to say about number 40. And that was yours, and I can't remember who I picked, but whoever I picked, I don't believe is anywhere near. I think I got injured and has been nowhere near the where I was hoping he'd end up. So,
well, a wide receiver 40 is round 8. So.
Yeah. So yeah, which is about where he was being taken last year. So, all right, moving on. Finally, and just an honorable mention. I really think that Zay Jones could have a good year this year, as he is now officially the only wide receiver left in Buffalo. So So, I mean, they've got to throw to someone other than Shady because
They called me too.
Shady's going to fall apart if he's the only one that they have to throw to. So, all right. So now let's move on to our tight ends. Let me actually change that over. All right, tight ends. Outside the top 12. Whose turn? Oh, I guess it's my turn to start. Last year I picked. Let's see. Last year it was. I can't remember who I picked last year. Let's go back and look.
I think one of us picked Antonio Gates.
I think actually, know what? We both picked Antonio Gates. That's what it was. We both picked the same one. Not making that mistake again. So, outside the top 12, I'd probably have to go. I'll let someone else pick the obvious. So I'm going to go with Austin Hooper. We've talked about Steve Sarkisian as an offensive coordinator. He likes throwing to his big receivers. He likes throwing to the big tight ends. Really, I think that he as an offensive coordinator is really the only reason Austin Seferian-Jenkins even got drafted, because they just kept force feeding ASJ the ball at Washington, and so I can see Hooper getting a lot more work this year with Sarkisian as the offensive coordinator. He showed some real sparks last year of being able to get the job done. So as the tight end 14 right now, I think he's probably my pick right now. Just again to avoid the obvious, my pick as a sleeper tight end. So, Greg, who do you have as a sleeper tight end?
Well, since you took mine, I'm going to go with Evan Ingram. I think of the guys that are outside of the top 12. I mean, Jack Doyle gets a lot of chatter, but realistically, that's going to be tied to the health of Andrew Luck because there's no quarterback on the bench for Indianapolis. Those guys suck. And the further down you go, I mean, you're going to run into some guys that either you have the bust potential in Julian Thomas or you got old man Witten. I don't know, but I'm saying Evan Ingram, has the most potential, and he's largely going to go undrafted.
Yeah, was it Justin was saying in last night's episode that Evan Ingram so far has been targeted the second most of any of the receivers for New York this preseason so far. So
that was with Marshall out.
Oh, that was with Marshall out. Yeah, Ingram's been targeted. So.
Still. Yeah, so.
All right, Ian, who do you have as your tight end sleeper?
Well, what's funny is after all the research I did, Cameron Brate was available in the 8th round or 9th round. If I was not going to pick Cameron Brate, which I feel like people would be insane not to, I would take CJ Fedorowicz.
Yeah, I can see that. He's unfortunately he's been injured for a couple of weeks, but I think with the way that not only Savage but also Watson throws as and act as quarterbacks, I believe that CJ Fedorowicz, other than Hopkins benefiting from the fact that Osweiler is no longer there, I think that Fedorowicz really is going to be a beneficiary, even though the Osweiler targeted him a ton. When I want to say the one game that Osweiler didn't start last year, when Savage started in his place, Fedorowicz got, I want to say, out targeted their other tight end. I want to say it was like 8-2 or something like that. So
right. Well, and part of it too is I don't think Savage keeps the job.
Probably not.
I think Deshaun Watson takes that job over, and with his rushing skills, he moves around the pocket. And what is a better dump down than a tight end coming around the side? So I think CJ Fedorowicz gets a lot of targets.
Yep. All right, and Justin, you get to take the obvious one.
I don't know if it's the obvious one, but I officially don't like any of you because I also like Austin Hooper. I also like Evan Ingram. And I'm really big on the obvious Cameron Brate. I was able to get him in the 12th round last night in a draft because everyone had already taken all of the tight ends before, and I know no one's going to take a second tight end. And there's too much hype around O.J. Howard. Once again, I don't want to talk about it too much, but Cameron Brate was the number 7 fantasy tight end last year. O.J. Howard is a blocking tight end and will not take pass catches. He'll take some, but not a lot of pass catches away from Cameron Brate. Once again, Evan Ingram is going to be a great target for Eli Manning, with Greg already saying that Eli Manning is his quarterback sleeper. Eli Manning has not really had a tight end to throw to in the last couple of years. I mean, when you have Larry Donnell and Will Tye as your tight ends.
Since Jeremy Shockey.
Yes, Jeremy Shockey hasn't had anybody. And so now with a consistent body there and not a hodgepodge or mismatch of who's starting, Will Tye, Larry Donnell, he's got a consistent, very athletic tight end in Evan Ingram. And so I was going to go with Evan Ingram as my number 1 pick, but I'm going to go with Cameron Brate as my pick for my sleeper.
All right. Well, that pretty much sums it up for us. I agree with every single sleeper that we picked. I mean, let's be honest. I for the most part, I think all of us closely are pretty much all on the same wavelength when it comes to sleepers and who. I think it's usually our busts that we usually disagree on, but I really like a lot of our picks for sleepers this year. So, all right, well, that is it for tonight's episode. We kept it a little bit shorter and sweeter for you instead of going, well over an hour like we have on the last 4, 5, 6 episodes. So, again, make sure to get onto iTunes and leave us a rating. We would really appreciate that. 1 star, 5 star, we don't care. Just leave us a rating. Go on to our
5 would be preferred.
5 would be preferred.
Just to be, if we're going to ask for things, let's ask for 5s.
All right. At this point, I'll take ratings. But yes, a 5 would be great. Also, make sure to get onto SkullKingFootball.com to check out our draft guide, as well as our rankings that I just updated them again today. So if you could take a look at those as well. I think that's about it. Again, I want to thank you for listening to tonight's episode, and for Greg, Ian, and Justin, my name is Ryan, and we'll talk to you guys later. Hey, Skull King Nation, thank you for listening to the Skull King Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.